Jonathan Rivera, and you are listening or watching the Welcome to the Future podcast, where we believe if we are the future, then the future is now. I want you to do me a quick favor. Go ahead and hit that like button and also subscribe. And if you're listening on Spotify or iTunes, we want you to leave us a review. That really helps us to get the word out and spread this message to as many people as possible. So if you could do that, we really, really appreciate it. So this podcast is a space where we pretty much hang out with people that we consider friends and family to talk about church, ministry, and culture. And I'm super excited for the guest that we have today. This person is someone that we love dearly. She is a friend of mine, someone that I've literally known for years, and it's just such a gift to the church. And I'm super excited today to introduce y'all to our second guest to the Welcome to the Future podcast, Mrs. Melody Adorno.
Hey.
What is going on,
is up? Shawty. I am so excited to be here.
So, first of all, how you feel?
I feel like I'm on a podcast.
Yeah.
So definitely the lights in this room, the whole setup is a vibe.
Shout out to, we're going to say this every podcast.
Yes.
Shout out to Randy, our media director.
Let's
always
go.
hooks it up, always sets it up so dope. So Randy, we appreciate you, dog, wherever you're at.
Love you. But yeah, no, I am so excited to be here. I can't wait to just dive in and just talk about the following.
Quick question. Have you ever been on a podcast before?
I have not, so no pressure, right?
True.
No pressure.
Let's go. You're going to kill it. It's going to be amazing.
Praise God.
So, Mello, to people who are watching, some of them may know you. They're like raving fans, going crazy
God.
right now. Other people have maybe never met you before. So let me give you a little background on Melody Adorno. So Melody is, first of all, my friend. She is a dope human. You were a youth pastor for years.
Yes.
You are SEU grad. We're part of something called SEU Worship and SEU Worship Ola. You're also part of Maverick City Musika, and also you're a songwriter for Maverick City, and you just do a million things.
Sheesh. When you put it that way, I'm like, who is she?
You got quite the resume, girl.
Wow.
And so, no, all jokes aside, you've done a ton, which is why I really wanted you to be on the podcast, because I feel like there's so much that people can learn from you and from your story and from the stuff that you've done. And so, real quick, let's get in our time machine. Let's go all the way back to the beginning. Tell us a few things about you. Let us know just who you are, where you come from. Just give us a little bit of background on you first.
For sure. Well, as you may or may not know, my name is Melody, and born and raised in church. I'm a PK, pastor's kid.
True.
So my home was really just the church, essentially. Like, home was our hotel, and home was the church.
Did you live up to the stereotype of a church kid that was a pastor's kid?
Define stereotype. There's many.
True. Were you like the running around, like painting the walls red, like tying old ladies' shoes during worship?
Oh my goodness, no. I wasn't like my father.
True.
Which was a rebel. But I think for me, I was just definitely a curious kid. So I was just always like in the room, a fly on the wall, listening to probably conversations I wasn't supposed to be listening to.
You were the kid who was older, always with older people.
Literally. Always hanging out with the adults and being like, I'm an adult too. And I'm like literally 5. So
True.
That was the vibe. But yeah, no, grew up in church. I think that a lot of the times as a PK, you think, okay, well, you must have been great, grew up in your faith, and that was it. But I think that definitely being a pastor's kid comes with a lot of different pressures and weights that we don't really normally like to talk about, because a part of that role of being a minister's kid or pastor's kid is to make sure that you are guarding your image and guarding the way that, you know, you're viewed. So yeah, I think just those type of misconceptions that we have, and with those pressures, there was a lot of things that I battled with internally that I never really spoke about. So I was always very like to myself. But I think that as I grew up, I was able to branch out and to really understand like the root of those things that those hurts or things that I had gone through were really coming from, and understanding how to build my own faith and not just leaning on the faith of my parents or the faith of others around me, but truly learning what it was like. What does my life look like as someone who says that they believe in who Christ is, and how do I reflect that in my own way, and how do I walk into purpose and in my own calling, you know?
True. So, I mean, you come from an amazing family. parents are amazing. Your church is amazing.
They're cool, I guess.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. One day we'll have them on the podcast.
For sure.
So you have an amazing family. You come from an amazing church. I guess my question to you would be like, what are some things that like growing up you had that you feel like made you the person that you are today?
Oh my gosh. Well, honestly, first and foremost, and not to gas them up because we just talked about them probably coming on this podcast, but truly my parents, like I think if it wasn't for the support system that I had growing up, like things would be a lot more different in my life. And so I'm so grateful for the value that my parents have instilled in me in family, and understanding the importance of that in everything. And I would say also just being able to be in different environments and spaces helped me to learn how to cope with change and transitions, because I feel like I've gone through so many different transitions, even though there's been like constants in my life, which has been obviously my family and my church home. But definitely just learning how to be resilient through all of those transitions has been such a helpful key to who I am today, with not learning how to get too comfortable with being comfortable, and understanding that when there is a transition, there has to be a greater purpose for it, and that it doesn't necessarily always mean that it's defeat, but it means that God is just shifting the narrative, and you just have to continue to trust that what he's setting up for you is so greater. So
I think one thing I love about your family, and like I'm even like, I don't have kids yet, but I'm getting ready in the future. Lord, give me some kids.
Hey.
And but one thing that I noticed is like people who do ministry and like people who are just doing well in life, a lot of times like there's people who have like a spiritual heritage that they receive. Like I see a lot, like kids who are pastors' kids, and like they have amazing parents, and then they do amazing things in ministry, and they even do more. And like as I'm looking into the future, I'm like, man, I want to pass something on to my kids. And so it's just so cool to see that like everything your parents done, and they pass on it, and now you're doing crazy things.
Sheesh.
Yeah, you're doing amazing things, but you didn't always know what you were gonna do. Like,
absolutely not.
I remember I knew you since you were like, oh my gosh, maybe 12, 10 years old. You were young.
Oof. Yeah.
And I remember since you were, I mean, even a teenager, you were already pursuing like music and worship and doing all this other stuff. Like, did you always know that you were gonna end up doing music?
Honestly, I think it was obviously always a passion in my life.
Okay.
But I think at one point I almost shelved it. You know, I was like it'll just be something I'll do for fun, and just like I love being a creative, but I don't know if it's gonna take me that far, because I think I tied it so much with career.
Gotcha.
So I was just like, I don't know, but it was always definitely a passion of mine for sure.
Okay. And so like, when did you actually start like, I don't know, pursuing music?
Oh my gosh. I mean, so I think in little ways, obviously growing up, like, you know, putting out little singles and just trying to make my way.
Yo, those singles were fire though.
Don't even get me started.
Little 13-year-old Melody was putting out some bangers, bro.
Like so horrible. But yeah, I mean, I think that there was always those little drives. Like, I don't think there was ever just like one moment where I was like, this is it for me. But I do think that there was that switch of like, okay, I can actually make a living off of this, and I want to continue to pursue this, when I was like in college. And so I think like into my like third year, I was kind of like, you know what, let me start setting myself up and positioning myself in places and spaces and rooms and with people that have done this before, and how I can actually make this a reality for my life.
So someone's listening to this and they're a worship leader or a songwriter, or they're just passionate about music, and they don't know where to start. They're like, I have this passion, I have this drive, I feel like I have the gift, but I just don't know where to go from here. Like, what do you say to that person?
Oh my gosh. I think the very first thing is collaboration, because as creatives, we can get in our own minds, and we can be our worst enemies. And so the best thing to do is just like throwing yourself into a space where, whether that's a song that you've written, whether that's a poem, or you want to be a poet, or whatever that looks like as a creative for your life, is starting to show people and be like, hey, what do you think about this? Or finding those that are in that space and already doing it, so that way it challenges you, it makes you better, and it already begins to cut that spirit of comparison. Because I think that's the biggest thing as a creative. We're like, oh, but are we good enough? Am I talented enough? Am I this enough? But that's just gonna like put it all to rest when you choose to just like, all right, well, it might not be a perfect song, it might not be the best, but I'm still gonna just choose to take that risk and show someone to see if there even is potential for me to continue to grow in this. Man,
I love that you mentioned that. One thing that I love about you is I feel like you're always yourself. you're goofy, crazy,
I try,
weird. No, I'm just kidding.
Definitely.
But I feel like you're always yourself. And I even, as I've gotten to hear you, like when it comes to music, even when it comes to music, like I feel like you're always yourself. Like, how have you been able to fight comparison in your life when it comes to music? Like,
for sure.
That's so tricky, because what happens a lot of times is we see what works and we kind of just mirror that in hopes that it works out for us. And then a lot of times that makes us more insecure, or we just don't progress because we're just become a copy of somebody.
Yeah.
How have you fought comparison in your life when it comes to you as an individual, and also when it comes to your music and like your gifting and your calling and what you do?
Yeah, I mean, I think the very first thing that I've done is I sit where that emotion is coming from, and as like shrinky as it may sound, or like super psychological, like like I think it's the truth. Like you really have to like sit with those emotions first, and almost even sometimes allow yourself to feel the jealousy and to feel the pain and to feel the comparison and just to feel that hurt, because I think if we try to suppress it for so long, we're gonna think, oh yeah, well, we don't compare, like we're fine, and then we find ourselves in a moment where maybe we're at our ultimate high, and then we just come crashing down and we're like, how did we get here? And I think it's because we try to push that away so much. So I think the very first thing that has helped me is like I stop and I think, I'm like, am I really comparing myself with the actual person themselves, or the opportunities that they're getting that I might not be having in this moment? And I think that that's where the root came from with me, is like understanding like I'm not going to look at someone as competition, but someone that can challenge me and also help me grow through it. And I think at the end of the day, that's what the church needs to be, even in the music industry where it's so competitive and it's all about oneself and it's all about that drive. Understanding how to shift a culture like that is challenging and it's difficult, but it's a part of like what we're created to do, which is to be together, to work together, to collaborate together. And so I think that's been a major like help in all of this, is to just understand like this person isn't a threat to me. This person is someone I want to walk with and do life with, and seeing it as a relationship. It's relationship building essentially.
Man, somebody put it on a t-shirt. You are not my competition.
You are not my competition.
Starts writing the song right now.
Oh my gosh.
But sometimes it's so hard, but you can't compete with someone that you have a relationship with. That you're actively walking with. And like competition isolates you, but collaboration brings us together. I am not trying to preach right now, but
no, I feel it. It's getting hot in this room.
But yeah, that's so important. I know earlier I heard you talking about when you went to college, your third year. So I know that you went to Southeastern University.
Yes, I did. I'm an alum.
Come on now.
Shout out to all my SEU folks.
True. So earlier you were telling me you changed your major like 3 times.
I did. And the fact that I graduated on time can only be a testament of the Lord.
Can we just take 5 seconds?
Thank you, Jesus. The glory. He is here.
He is here. What were the 3 majors that you had? Like, where did you start? And then where did you end up?
Okay, so actually, I just remembered it was 4. Okay. But the reason why, like, the 4th one, it lasted me quite literally 1 day, and that was pre-med. So super cute. She was feeling like she
wanted to wear scrubs.
Yeah, she wanted. I don't want no scrubs, you know what I mean? But I wanted
She
scrubs.
watched Grey's Anatomy and she's like, I found my calling.
Exactly. I was like, give me the scalpel, I'm ready.
I got this.
1 day, literally 1 day. And then I was like,
was that the first one?
That was, but it was like, again, it was still during kind of like the first week of school where people are still trying to figure out their classes.
So she comes into pre-med and then she goes to what?
Yes. And then she goes into psychology.
Really?
And and that was actually
my plan.
Yeah, fun times. Exactly. My plan was no plan. My plan was I like always had a passion for helping people and to just listen and to be there for others. And so I think first, like, that's why I was so drawn to the medical field. And then with psychology, it was like, oh, I get to listen and to help guide in people's like problems, which ended up being my minor, so it wasn't too far. And then from there, I went into music business actually. And but with music business, there were so many other like elements that came with that I think I just began to get super overwhelmed, and I was still in a place where I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I landed in communications and with a like focus in PR, and so that's where we landed.
Got you.
Interesting.
Very
interesting.
Do you feel like you use your degree now?
I actually do.
That's actually really cool.
The craziest part is like I didn't understand even why I chose that. At first, I even was like, I'm probably taking the easy way out because everyone's a comm major.
Literally, I was watching TikTok the other day, and someone was walking around and asking people, "What is the easiest major to have?" Everyone was like, "Oh, communications for sure."
Oh my gosh, no, I know, but it's like honestly, being in the space that I'm in now.
True.
All I do is communicate with people and have to understand and learn the ropes of what it looks like. Like, for example, when you're even releasing a song and making sure that there's the right promotion behind it and like having the right connections and relations. And this whole space is all about networking. It really is. Like, it's, yes, your talent is maybe 10% of the rest of what you do. And so it's kind of crazy because at first I was asking myself the same thing. I'm like, how did I get here? What am I doing? Is this even going to be practical? But somehow, some way, here we are, and God did it. He did it.
So you're in college, you're changing your major a bunch of times. You don't really have a direction of like where you're going.
Right.
When did you get to a place where you're like, I feel like I know what the Lord's calling me to do, and I feel like I know the direction that I want to walk in? Like, what was the shift? Where did that happen? Where you're like, I think I know what I want to do and where I want to go?
Yeah. So even going back, as we were talking about being born and raised in the church, right? I think that there's kind of like this also misconception of growing up of being like, well, my calling and my career have to be aligned and they have to look the exact same.
True.
And that brought a lot of confusion over me because I always knew that I was called and like felt such a tug towards like full-time ministry when it came to music and worship. But I was like, how can that be practical though? You know, like it ain't making money, it ain't paying the bills. You know what I mean? And obviously they're like, well, that's where you activate faith. But when you're in the middle of it, it's like you're not thinking about that. You're trying to be, as myself, like I'm very like, I have my dreamer side, but I have my realistic side for sure. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what's happening? So I think when I alleviated myself from the pressure of understanding that like the two can find a way to coexist with each other, it allowed me to honestly just dream bigger and to allow myself to be like, okay, so what would that look like? And I think that was that shift for me. Is like that junior year, I was so heavily involved with SU worship, and we were connecting with so many different people that were coming in as guests for SU conference, that were doing this in real time, that were songwriters for different major worship teams or labels and companies. And so having those conversations and being able to be like, wow, like if they're doing that, like there's hope for me. Like there's hope.
There's something about getting around other people who are doing things that you want to do that does something to you.
It sparks up like a completely different passion, and it starts to get your wheels like turning, and you're like, okay, wait, like
who was somebody that you got around and it sparked something in you?
Oof, oh my gosh. So there was this guy named Osby Berry. Yes. And
shout out to Osby.
Shout out to Osby. I love you. So yeah, no, that's my big bro. And so just being able to hear his story, because he blew up from a YouTube like video.
True.
And then from there on, like his career just took off.
Like, where's Osby now?
Osby is doing his thing. He's in Transformation Nation.
Shout out to Pastor Mike Todd.
Shout out to Mikey.
Shout out to Pastor Mike.
Pastor Mikey. So yeah, he was one of the ones that really like just inspired me. And then I got around his team that was helping him during that time. And so sitting down, having conversations with them, because that was something that I think going into it as well, I wanted to have a really great understanding of just the industry as a whole, because I think that we don't realize that, yes, there's worship for the church, but then you're going into a space where then there's worship that you're portraying out into the world, and like that comes with the spiritual aspect, but there's a really big business part to it. And so I was like, I need to know the ins and outs of what that looks like. And because I've always had a passion for not only singing but songwriting specifically as well, I just began to just continue to ask those questions. So I would say all of that to say Osby was like that spark, and then from there on I just started connecting with other people along the way.
So again, if you're a leader, you feel called to something, I just want to encourage you, get around people that inspire you, even if you can't actually meet them, whether it's listening to them on a podcast or an interview or a service or whatever
message
the
them
case
on
is.
Instagram,
DM somebody and say, shoot your shot.
Shoot it.
You never know what's gonna happen. But I think that's so, I know for me, like growing up, like whenever I was in certain rooms or like I would go to certain conferences or I would see people, it would do something for me. And it would be, man, if God did it with them, like he could totally do it with me.
Right.
I think, Melody, one thing that I love about you is that you're not just a a singer, you're a worshiper. Like, I really feel that, and I love that about you. It's something tangible that people experience whenever you do sing. I think we're in a time where people want to be singers, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think we need more people that are making good music that makes the world a better place. But I think sometimes there's people who are singers that are not worshipers, but they're in worship spaces.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Exactly.
What's the difference between being a singer and being a worshiper?
Yeah, I mean, I think as a singer and a worshiper, the best way that I can put it, I guess, like the difference is that one leans on your talent and one leans on your humanity. And I think as a worshiper, when you're able to tap into your humanity and who you are, and with your shortcomings and with the things that God has blessed you and gifted you with, it allows for you to see life differently. And so you're not just worshiping from a stage, but your life becomes that, and the relationships that you're building and the people that you're talking to, and there's more things to learn as a worshiper, I think, like when you enter that space, than it is to just develop your talent, because your talent can only take you so far.
True.
And I think that worship just begins to show a different type of posture in your life and opens the horizons to see that being a worshiper is so multifaceted. There's so much more to than just picking up a mic, singing and leading people into a time of worship.
True.
And as mentioned before, like, it really is only 10% of what you do.
Yeah.
The rest of it really is the way that you carry your life and the way that you are choosing to reflect who Christ is in that every day.
True. Man, that's so good. You now get the chance to be a songwriter, so working with labels and different songwriters and writing groups and all that stuff.
Crazy.
We could talk forever about that.
Literally.
You're also part of Maverick City Musika,
Yes,
which is a lot of fun. I know. Come on, I love Maverick City music, but man, when I started hearing the music in Spanish and just that ethos and that culture, like it was awesome to see. And I know that a lot of Hispanics were really, really excited about that. How's that journey been like for you?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's been so surreal. And I think to even now, I'm still processing how I got here. I'm still, at times I'm like, when am I going to wake up? Like, this is not real.
True.
But at the same time, like, I want to talk about even just the challenges that I think it came with, because I grew up very much, in a bilingual home, and so everything was super Spanglish. It wasn't like, all Spanish or all English, and so I had a mix of both growing up, but then being in school and just being around people that weren't Spanish speakers. At some point I did lose the language a little bit, and so that always brought a little bit of insecurity in me. I was always just kind of like I'm not Latina enough, or like I can't speak Spanish as well as like someone that was born in the island, like, and so was always like constantly like feeling so insecure about that. So even going into Musika, when I got asked to be a part of it, I was like, ooh, praise God.
You sure?
Yeah, I was like, are you sure? Because like, have a friend that she's Colombian and she
speaks mad Spanish.
Right, she speaks mad fluent Spanish. And so and they were like, no, like, we want you. And to be able to see now the representation of that as someone who is Latina but was born in the States, and is able to bridge that gap that I think has been there for so long, and is still, I think, kind of there, and we're fighting through that, of understanding it's like being Latina is like more than just, the language that we speak. It's a whole culture. It's the way that we speak to each other. It's the way that we love one another. Like, there's different values that we hold even in our household that sets us apart. And so it's been such an amazing experience to be able to sharpen, obviously, my Spanish speaking skills and things that I know, I gotta work on.
Let's just do the rest of this podcast in Spanish.
Bueno, hola mi gente.
My girl was ready.
I'm like, if you want to.
I mean, I could switch it if you want.
Yeah, I'm like, we do a little flip, but it might be a little hard on the ears, but praise God.
Yo, just random question. You ever be saying some disparates?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
You ever just be saying some words and they're like, that's not how you say it?
1000%. 1000%. It's always like the worst thing too, like, because I mix up my adjectives, like, or is it adjectives? I don't even know English. Like my nouns, or like past tense. I think that's the one, like past and present tense. And they're like, oh, so you were there? Oh no, I'm here right now.
I'm here right now.
And they're like, oh, but that's not how you do it.
But you said that you were there before. No, I'm here right now.
Right. Facts. And I'm like, amen, gracias.
Just laughs nervously.
Yeah, laughs nervously, literally. But yeah, no, it's been an amazing experience, and I feel so honored to be able to be a part of a movement that is just breaking a lot of, you know, misconceptions of what the industry looks like, and what, you know, allowing to just really be a true bridge between the world and like the church, and finding a way to really meet people where they are, and to bring them into a congregational time of worship.
Man, so now you have this amazing platform. You're traveling literally the world, singing and songwriting and worshiping. But one of the best things about you is you haven't lost who you are. I feel like you're still the same Melody that I knew 5 years ago.
I tried.
When you were a college student. You haven't changed. How have you been able to keep a level of humility in spite of opportunity and platform and influence and all these different things that come with being in the music industry? How have you been able to stay grounded and stay you and be humble in spite of all of that?
Yeah. I mean, being able to just go through the very first obvious thing, obviously the Lord, 1000%, because without him,
you, baby Jesus.
Yes, thank you, God. And allowing for my heart to never lose those convictions in my life, and then just keeping myself surrounded with family and friends that really know who I am, and opening up my heart to correction and accountability, and moments where, because I've had conversations where I've literally gotten a little pop out, like, you know.
Girl, that's a curse word in 2022.
Yeah. Accountability, what?
You have people in your life who tell you when you tripping?
It's like, no, like, I could be a better me all by myself. And it's like, no, you really cannot.
No, you can't.
No, you can be. Anyways, this podcast is filled with so many little moments like this. We love that. So I hope you're enjoying it. But anyways, yeah, I would say just, I am so thankful for the people around me, especially my family, that really just says it the way that it is, and keeps it real with me, and allowing myself to have moments where I need to disconnect, you know, and refuel and reset, and going into my room and having moments with the Lord and really praying and making sure that I'm intentional with that, because that's something that I think you can so easily lose in a pace in a life like this, is like setting aside time to really spend with the Lord and to reset for yourself, just for your overall mental health, your spiritual, your physical, emotional health. And so that's that. And then another practical thing that has really helped me stay centered and focused into who I am is understanding how to find pockets and moments where I just like do nothing, like absolutely nothing, like just watch and binge a show and go out with friends. And that's something that I struggled for a long time, and I think we even had a conversation. You remember me sitting here and being like, I have no friends, I have zero time to do anything, I don't have any community, like and so in this season, like, really I've been intentional with that, with creating pockets and moments as much as I can to really just be Melody, nothing else but just myself, and to sit in that moment and not having to prove or do anything for anyone or anything except for just existing, you know.
So true. Which, by the way, make sure you get your Disney pass.
I will in November. Hey,
one last thing I want to ask you about, and I didn't even tell you I was going to ask you about this, but as we've been talking, I was like,
plot twist.
I would love to ask this question. I love seeing everything that you've done in music and in ministry and all these things, but you've done all that stuff while at the same time navigating some really tough realities in your life. Is it okay if we talk about it?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, cool.
Go ahead.
So I know that I don't know if it was a year or 2 years ago, you were diagnosed with Lyme's disease. Which is a really tricky disease, because it's a disease that's a bunch of other diseases.
Right.
Like, it affects your body in so many different ways. And I think the craziest part is the way that you were a youth pastor. You've been traveling the country singing and songwriting while at the same time navigating your Lyme's. Like, what has that process been like for you, and how have you been able to just persevere and push through and do everything God's calling you to do while at the same time struggling and fighting through this thing?
Right. I mean, it's still definitely a process, and every single day I think I'm learning more and more about myself, but also who God is and his character when we are called for something great, but we have shortcomings and things that we never expected would hit us. And so this whole journey honestly has been a learning experience, and being okay with understanding that like healing really doesn't have a timeline. I think that we're always constantly going to be healing something, and that's evidence and should be kind of like a checkpoint in our lives that if we're not constantly healing parts of our life, then like, are we really growing in the Lord?
Girl, that's a word.
Right. And so praise the Lord, praise God. But yeah, and so I think that's something that I've learned through all of this is like in my frustration, in the times where truly like I've almost let go of my faith because I was like, Lord, like I'm not going to continue to do this if I don't have the strength to do it and like put myself through this misery. Like there was moments where right before I had to go up on the stage and to lead people into a time of worship, I'm here having an entire episode and my body's like going out of whack and I'm like, how can I get up there? And God just like literally speaking into my heart and being like, remember that this is what I've given you and I've placed this in you, and so trust that I'm going to give you that strength to take you to where you need to. And I think that's the best way to store a hard time in our lives, is that when God gives us something, we're reminded that it was a gift and it was something that he put in us. And so he's the only one that can allow us to be sustained through it. And so understanding that posture of surrender every single day, I'm like, God, it is not by my strength, but it's through you alone that gives it to me. And I'm going to run and I'm going to keep persevering because I know that there's something that you are birthing through this story and that you're not finished yet. So
if you're in a season in your life where you're struggling through something, fighting through something, saying, Lord, how can I do this? Like, man, the Bible says that like in your weakness, God is made perfect. And I feel like your story and your life is such a great example of that. Mello, thank you for being part of our podcast
this is so
and
fun.
telling your story and just hanging out and having a conversation. Guys, we love you. We hope you've enjoyed this content. If you want to watch more of it, make sure that you subscribe to FMD Youth. Make sure you look us up on Apple and on Spotify and look up the Welcome to the Future podcast and leave a review. And we love you guys so much. We can't wait to be with you for the next podcast, to have more family and friends talking about faith and life and culture and ministry and church. We love you, and we will see you next time. Peace out.
Bye.
Hey, this is Pastor Jonathan saying thank you so much for watching this video. We hope that you found it helpful, encouraging, or inspiring. If you want to have more content like this, do us a favor. Press the like button. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. Turn on that little bell so you can get all the notifications and follow us on all of our social media platforms. Love you. See you soon.